right, well, I started this project with the Tamiya Marder I kit. Excellent kit. Comes with two really nice figures, and it's a fairly new kit, so it's one of Tamiya's better ones for sure. Um, the build went really, really good. The parts are really nice. I love Tamiya kits. They just go together so well, and it's just amazing how easy they are to put together. I recommend Tamiya for the newer modelers for sure. Doing the tracks, just make sure everything lines up so they fit right. If you don't, you're going to have a problem putting the links together. And then something I do to make things a little bit easier, when I've got a lot of the pieces gone on the sprue, I'll just come back and cut the pieces off that aren't being used, so it's a little bit easier on the eyes. You can find the good parts better. Here's the assembly as it's going. And then for the weld seams on the kit, which aren't there because I saw them on the reference photos, the kit actually comes with a nice pamphlet with some reference photos. So the weld marks I just made really quick with a soldering pencil. And it's so easy to do, and they come out really, really nice. So I could recommend this for any little weld seams if you want to do it this way instead of putty. Here's the final. And then the kit is built. And I added a few other details, like some wiring for the lights, and that was about it, because the kit's very detailed. And then my reference photos, you know, I'm always checking those, taking a look. The rounds were painted black first, and then after that I painted them with brass acrylic paint, just sprayed them, and that was ready to go. I'm Glenn Bartolotti, and this is where I spend most of my free time. So during October and November and then May and June, I spend most of my time out here doing my studies for reptiles and amphibians. And I was fortunate enough to be able to retire at age 59, at least semi-retire, because then I worked for the state, Florida Wildlife Conservation, doing studies on rare reptiles and amphibians. And in fact, for a whole year, 2019, most of that year, and actually 2018, 2019, I did a whole year study 4 times a week up in North Florida. So I was driving up there, staying in a cabin, and when I was in the cabin, I would build models, tanks and stuff up in the cabin, and work on those because there's nothing to do at night. So I kept going that way, but I only built a few models here and there during that period. So if things get a little slower on the channel here, it's because I just have not enough time to put what I want into the models. So if you see a little slowdown, then that's why. But I'm trying to keep things going because I really enjoy the channel, and I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'm helping everyone learn some new techniques, some old techniques, something new, something that's interesting. So, and a lot of weathering that I do on my vehicles, I learn a lot from my own vehicle. It's always something that I go through or get on that helps me with my own models. That being said, let's get back into this Marder I by Tamiya and get it finished up. All right, the first step I took on painting the model was flat black on the undersides just to get shadows in. The next step was Tamiya's red-brown over the whole top, finishing up the painting. And then with late war acrylic armor dark yellow, I sprayed it in a fashion that would make it more of a highlight and shadow effect due to what I painted before with the can sprays. This is one of the techniques I use along with a few others in painting my models. In my reference, I found a photo I wanted to copy. I had some decals for it, so that's what I used. Here's the camo on and the decals.
All right, for the tracks, I used pastels mixed with turpenoid and just painted it right on. You can see it. And then with my armor yellow, I started just highlighting some areas with a paintbrush. I did a effect before with using paper printed out as camouflage on some of my other dioramas that I've showed you. I learned that I got some new printer toner, and it didn't react as well to the water as the old toner that was on there before. So this is something you have to think about in doing it. I lost a lot of the yellow tones in this camo, but it actually turned out fairly decent, and I was pretty much impressed with it, how it worked, and it looked all right. So I was going to go ahead and leave it. Let's talk about a wash on your models, diorama, base, groundwork, structures, etc. A little bit about a wash on your model or diorama or building, anything you're going to use a wash on. It's probably one of your most important techniques you're going to use in scale modeling as far as weathering and effects. The wash brings out obviously details, cracks, corners, just part of the weathering process altogether, because you can streak a wash, put it on heavy, put it on hardly at all, pin wash. So many different ways you can use a wash. And the other thing the wash does, it kind of takes away some of your flaws by filling in some places maybe the paint didn't get into a crack, something like that. It kind of ties everything together that you've done so far as your paint work. And then obviously over the wash, then you can start doing some other weathering techniques to even more enhance the model. But overall, this is probably the most effective way to bring your model to life, your building structure. And there's even uses on figures too for washes. But you have to be careful because you don't want your figures to look mechanical or like they're part of the vehicle. So that's the only thing about washes that I would talk about here. And also, if you need to see more how I do my washes, I would go to my videos where I'm just building a vehicle, and you'll see those in the thumbnails, or it's just a vehicle only, because I get more in depth on the weathering techniques that I use. When I'm doing these diorama builds with the vehicles, it's a little bit more condensed. So I'm going to also just show minimal of what I do, and that's what this is all about. All right, the diorama base is a plastic container which I got from a craft store, and then I just got a piece of cardboard so I could mark up and do a layout of the diorama that I was going to do. This is real important. A lot of people probably don't think so. I didn't at first, a long time ago, long time ago, but then I realized it's real important to do this layout. It's going to help in your sizing and how you're going to do things in the future, so everything fits and you don't come up with a big surprise. The tank has to fit, so I've got this layout made on this cardboard, and then with the cardboard I can go and transfer it to plastic so I know my sizes, and then I can start doing my plastic facade and then adding windows from the Mini Art diorama accessory set. It's really a fun way to do this, and I love making these facades out of plastic because then I use a magic sculpt to do all the rest of the work. For the roof, it's just a plastruck roof, plastic that I put on top. And here you can see the diorama come in shape. From the layout to this is always real fun to see. And the kit fit right in there. And then I get the magic sculpt out and I start putting in it for the walls and doing the texturing with a toothbrush. And then of course after that I make a little tool with a piece of wire, and I go ahead and carve in the stones using reference photos that I have from stonework in France, etc., to get things just right. The initial phase is just getting these stones in, and then I put more texture on with a toothbrush after I've got the stones all laid out on the plastic. And then I use another tool I made. It's just a little flat piece of metal, and I can round out the stones around the corners. And this helps a lot. Bring out more of the detail in the stone, way it looks, etc. And here's the scene so far. So you can see the area here that I do not have any magic sculpt. And there's another area on the side of the house there. But the scene's coming together, and then magic sculpt is also used to start on the groundwork. I started with the road, and this is also going to be textured with a toothbrush, as always. And I like magic sculpt because I can really get the groundwork. I add a little bit of sand into it while it's wet, and then I also add some gravel and adhere this with PVA glue that's been diluted. The base now is sprayed flat black around the edges, and then in the red brown for the rest of the model. I didn't really like the way the roof was just so bland and flat looking, so I added more texture by scraping lines with an X-Acto knife. Here you can see I've added some static grass using PVA glue, and here you can see where I've added it into the diorama, and then an old paintbrush was used for the taller grass. Just cut pieces off and glue it also after the other static grass in places. And you can see here the scene so far as it's going on. And then next I get my airbrush out, and with different tones of greens, lighter, darker, I start airbrushing the grass right on the diorama. This really brings out the decal and ties it into a lot of the rest of the parts of the diorama. I always paint it because it just looks a lot better. And then the dirt and ground is painted with different tones of browns and yellows, ochre colors, things like that. And then the bricks and stones on the building are now detail painted in different colors by using my reference for the stones in the region. And you can see here this is finished. And then vinyl spackling is put into the cracks as always. This is done with an old brush. I just paint it right in. I dilute it a lot of times, a little bit with water sometimes, depending on the thickness of the spackle. And after that is done and on, I wipe it off with a damp cloth, and you can see here how it looks after it's wiped off. And then I take a look at the scene once again, just to get a look and see what I need to do. The little section here, this little stone gate, facade, whatever you want to call it, I'm using coffee stirs for the fence. And I also had this built in the same way in a larger scale figure of a SS guy in Normandy also. So I replicated it here in this diorama. And then here I'm putting on burnt umber mixed with turpenoid for a wash again. It's the same basic wash that I did on the Marder I as well. This wash definitely makes a difference in the detail of your groundwork. Things are going to start popping, fills in the cracks, and it's just part of the process of getting your diorama looking more detailed, and it just adds a lot to it with this wash. As I spoke about it earlier in the video, it's just a very important thing, and it's really going to bring out a lot of the details you do, and also hide maybe some stuff. Here you can see I'm going to do a wash on the actual stonework of the building, and I wanted to be a lot more subtle on this because I didn't want it heavily weathered, and a lot of this burnt umber wash would actually darken the colors, and I didn't want it to be too dark. I just wanted it weathered, and of course it's going to be applied a little darker in some places because it is part of the weathering process. And here you can see it all finished. I had some plants left over from another diorama I did, and you can see me adding them here. You can get these at a craft store in the hobby section. They had them for, I guess, model railroading and other types of hobbies that people use these for. And then for the roof, I just wanted to make sure I got it looking more detailed and contrasty, and it just didn't like the way it looked, so I added a thin layer, kind of a wash almost of burnt umber that stayed wet, and then while it was wet I could add the pastel powders that I grind up myself and apply them in there and just really work them in, and they stick to the oil wash really well, and then when they dry they look really good. And so I was pleased with this. And then I also wanted to add the moss on the roofs. As you can see, sometimes I did this with flocking. And the plants were detailed a little bit more, so they just weren't so monotone. I added some yellows and browns to give it some life. And then with an olive color pastels that I ground up, I just mixed it with terpenoid and added some of this effect onto the stonework for weathering. And you can see here I'm also doing it onto the building itself, especially in places where moisture is going to stay longer, and that's where you're going to get this moss growth, especially in the cracks and corners. Acetate was used for the broken window. Just cut it out with X-Acto knife. And then I just detailed some of the window frame with some chipping. I got some clear plastic sprue and sawed it so I'd have some dust so I could use in the broken glass on the window seal. And here I'm adding the Marder I just to get a look and glue it down with some PVA glue. Next, the figures. The figures, one is from the Tamiya kit and the other one is a really nice Arto figure. He's supposed to be a Hetzer tanker, but I used him in this. He worked perfect. I used the Zenithal effect of painting where I started darker with the airbrush, and then from the top down did a lot of lightening for the uniform colors, etc. And I used actually the portable airbrush that you've seen a lot of advertisements on. It's working really well so far, and I'm really liking not having to go in my garage. And you can see here I use the cardboard to test before I go to the figure. It's a real important thing. I airbrushed most of everything, and then when I was finally finished airbrushing, I did all the rest of the painting, detail painting by brush, mixing colors, etc. for the face, and then finishing up the uniforms in the same way. Painting figures, you're going to hear from all the modelers. It's tough if you're not a figure painter all the time. It's definitely a challenge. And here you can see the figure with his wires for his headphones made using solder. And then the figure is glued on to the base and the other figure into the tank, and here's the final model. It came out as I thought it would. I was thinking of adding another figure, and I finally said it's enough. I was thinking of a figure in the front here, but I thought it might distract from the whole layout and the look. So anyhow, on to the next project. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.